Today we are going to be installing the single greatest modification that you can do to any car or truck with an automatic transmission to improve its acceleration, its performance, its drivability. Pretty much everything about the Ugly Truck is so much better now. I just got back from a test drive. I have a huge smile on my face, so you guys are going to want to stay tuned to the end of this video to see how much better the Ugly Truck is now that we swapped out this one simple part. Enjoy the content, guys. About 3 months ago, I tackled a project which I have actually never done when it comes to anything automotive related, and that's rebuilding an automatic transmission, front to back, top to bottom, all new clutches, all new seals, all new bearings, pretty much everything. I'm happy to report that the transmission in question, it's a 4L80 and it's attached to this engine right here, which is a turbo 8.1 liter big block, Gen 7 to be precise. The transmission is doing great. We've got about 500 miles on the truck and we started abusing the transmission pretty much right away with like 30 miles on it. But everything transmission-wise is doing great. We got a real big cooler up front. I took the cooler out of the radiator, or just took it out of the loop. But everything is running perfectly, except I don't have my good torque converter in. And the reason for that is because as soon as I got the transmission back in the truck, I started it up and I heard a few noises which I probably heard before, but I was being hypersensitive because it's a brand new transmission. I just rebuilt it. Everything was brand new. And I was like really, I guess, paranoid that the noise I was hearing was an indication of a problem. Now, the short version is it totally was not. Basically what I did is I took the Circle D converter out and I called them up and I shipped it back to them. Very nice guys down there. Great customer service. Basically, they're like, look, if you think something's wrong with it, we'll be happy to check it out. I offered to pay them for it and they're like, nope, it's totally covered. So I shipped it down there to them. They cut it apart, they cleaned it, they checked everything out, and it all did check out. There was nothing wrong with it. And they shipped it back to me, which I got it like back at the end of September. But I just haven't had time to do anything with it yet. So today we're going to be reinstalling the Circle D torque converter into the 4L80 that's in the Ugly Truck. The one that I picked is a 32 to 3400 stall speed, I believe. I forget the specs on it. I think maybe a 298 millimeter converter. I'll put all the pertinent info up on the screen, but the short version is I wanted a higher stall speed converter to help the turbo spool up a little quicker. Now this guy right here is an S480, it's from VS Racing, and it's got a 132AR T6 exhaust housing, so it's definitely free-flowing on the exhaust side. I've got a 60 millimeter VS Racing gate, so we get plenty of boost control. This thing will hold a rock solid 5 pounds of boost if we want it to, but right now we actually have, I think we got a 10-pound spring in there, and I can turn it up to, with a boost controller, I think I've got it turned up to like 12 or 13 right now. But anyway, getting sidetracked. The S480 does spool up a little slow, even though we have just about 500 cubic inches pushing it. When I was at the track, I did a bunch of data logs, and I think it took about 4 seconds to go from full throttle to full boost. And when I did the data log, I can only do about 1700 RPM on the foot brake to try to build up a little boost, which at 1700 RPM, you're not going to do anything. I have a two-step on there, but once again, at 1700 RPM, it's all pretty much useless. So enter the torque converter. The one that I have in there now is a Transtar 88H, which is like a stock replacement high stall 4L80 converter, but it's like, it's way tight. The truck pulls amazing once you get into boost. I think in the 8th mile it trapped like 89 miles an hour with a 819 ET perhaps. I'll put the right numbers up on the screen, it's been forever. But once again, the whole version, or the whole reason why we're installing this torque converter is to help that acceleration. So today what I'm going to be doing is reinstalling the Circle D converter. We'll pull the trans back out, we'll swap everything. I will check out the transmission fluid. I'll pull the pan, I'll drain it, swap in a new filter just to make sure everything on the inside is kosher, because it is a complete rebuild. It was my first rebuild. I don't want to say I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not a transmission guy. I'm pretty sure everything's right, but you know, 500 miles later, it's just a good opportunity to freshen things up with a new converter, check the fluid, and then hit the road for a test drive if everything works out the way that I think it will. So let's get to work. So every time I do a job like this, I always swear to myself, I'm gonna get a lift and it'll make my life so much simpler. But I don't have one yet, and until then, the good old-fashioned floor jack and jack stands are gonna get the job done. Now, before I tear it out, I wanted to give the transmission just like a health checkup to make sure there's no major surprises like, bearing material in the bottom of the transmission pan. And so far, I'm really happy with what we found. So we've got the pan here. The fluid is really nice and kind of red, cherry color, pink, whatever you want to call it. Of course, there's a little bit of clutch material that kind of settles down here on the magnet, but when you rub it together, there's absolutely no metallic stuff in there. It's obviously metallic if the magnet is going to pick it up, but like no chunks is kind of what I'm trying to say. There's no sharp material down there like a bearing that might be falling apart. And I don't even see any like sparkly gold material, which would be an indication of like a bearing or a bushing that's kind of starting to wear out. There's, of course, a little bit of that gray material, which I think is kind of normal for like, the clutch is just seating in or wearing in or whatever. But yeah, for the most part, I'm happy with what's on the inside. So now what I'm going to do is just slap a brand new filter up in there, just because for the most part, the transmission is going to be in there for good now. It will get replaced when we put the big motor in, but I got to get a couple more passes out of it, at least in this condition. I might actually end up putting this 4L80 into the step side truck. So I want to make sure this transmission is going to last a good and long time. So new filter, put the pan back on, and then we'll tear the transmission all the way out. So after a couple short hours of work, we have the 4L80 sitting on the transmission jack underneath the truck, and we are ready to swap out the torque converter. Now this is honestly something I probably should have done like a year ago. As soon as I got the turbo kit built, I should have put in a high stall converter because it would have improved the drivability of this truck so much. But it's a learning process, you build as you go. Better late than never, I guess. So just a couple of quick notes on pulling this thing apart. It's actually pretty simple because it's a two-wheel drive truck, and I've kind of, because I've had it in and out so many times now, I've kind of figured out a good shortcut where like a lot of these bolts are pretty easy to access through the fender well. That saves me time. I can leave the main exhaust in. I've got plenty of room to work. I do have to take the crossover out that goes from the passenger side manifold all the way across to the driver because I ran that pretty close to the inspection cover because of ground clearance. So I have to take that off to get the inspection cover off, but to get the crossover out, I do need to remove the downpipe. But everything is like V-banded. We've got V-bands on the turbo, on the wastegate, and on the rest of the exhaust. So everything removes actually pretty quickly, especially considering how tight everything is having a big block under the hood of a Silverado. So anyway, we're ready to swap that out. The torque converter that I chose is a Circle D 265 millimeter converter with a single disc lockup and a 32 to 3400 RPM stall speed. That's the highest stall speed that they make in the 265 millimeter size. You can go down to like a 250 something, and they have all kinds of different options. Basically, call them up, tell them what you have and what you want to do, and they'll make a recommendation. That's exactly what I did. There's a couple different options though. They do have a triple disc lockup. This is a single disc lockup. And the reason why I chose the single is just because I don't actually lock the torque converter clutch under wide open throttle in the way I have the tuning set up. So there's really no reason for that extra clutch capacity, although if you do decide you want to lock up the converter under wide open throttle or under maximum power, a triple disc is probably the right option, especially if you have a heavy turbo truck. Stall speed, yeah, that's the highest stall speed they offer in this particular size. And we just kind of, when I talked to him on the phone, when I first placed the order back in like August or September, I just told him, you know, what I have for a truck, how much it weighs, my power goals, the rough RPM range of the engine. And that's kind of what we determined was the best option for the truck. It's going to be way, way better than the stock converter that's in there. So I'm really excited to get this thing out on the road. It's been a dream of mine for a long time to have this truck be able to roll into the throttle and just spin the tires. And I know it's got the power to do it. I mean, on 7 pounds of boost, this thing makes 620 pounds of torque at the tire. And I'm on like 12 to 13 pounds of boost now. So I have no idea how much torque that's going to be putting down, but it should be more than enough to spin the tires with the help of a right converter to get that turbo spooling up on time. So anyway, I'm going to start by getting this thing primed, you know, fill it with just a little bit of ATF. You never want to put these things in dry. Take a little bit of Vaseline or something, just kind of put it on the outside so it doesn't damage the seal. We'll get it thrown in the transmission and then put it back together and go for a drive. Okay, so we've talked a whole bunch before about the torque converter having the proper clearance into the flex plate and making sure that doesn't bind up when you go to install the two. So right now the bell housing bolts are all fully tightened down, and I can still nice and freely move the torque converter back and forth. I do have one bolt started, so it won't spin all the way around, but I know it's not binding up. So that's the first thing you need to make sure of. And the second thing, you want to make sure you have the perfect amount of space in between the flex plate and the flex plate and the torque converter when you tighten the bolt. So this is called pull out. Now, the ideal dimension is 1/8 of an inch, and I happen to have an 1/8 inch drill bit right here. And as you can see, right in there, that is way too much space. But Circle D does give you different spacers or washers, and I have the thicker one installed right here. They give you a 60 and a 1/20 thousandths, and with the 1/20, a 1/8 inch drill bit just about perfectly fits in there. And that's how I know that's basically the washer that I need. So now, when I go to tighten those bolts down, the converter will pull ahead by exactly 1/8 of an inch. right, so taking off from like a dead stop, the first thing that you notice with a looser converter is it takes a little bit more throttle input to get moving. And I hope that once I get going under like full acceleration and stuff, that the shifts soften up a little bit, because whenever I rebuilt the transmission, I did a bunch of hydraulic changes that really cranked up the firmness of the shift, which is good because that means those clutch packs are engaging right away. But with that stock converter, like they're like, bam, they snap right in. But in theory, with a little bit looser converter, they're going to soften that up. And honestly, just kind of taking off in that first little bit, just partial throttle, it definitely feels like it's done what it's supposed to do. Not necessarily soften the shifts, but make them a little bit less harsh, because I guess the looseness of the converter kind of absorbs that. But I don't know. So far, I'm happy. There's no weird noises. Truck is driving good. I'll put probably, I don't know, 10, 15 miles on it just to kind of let things do what they got to do. Double check the fluid level, and then we'll go get the little draggy GPS box, do some wide open throttle runs. All right, this will be about half to 3/4 throttle. Okay, that's full throttle. Whoa, hold on. Yeah. All right, the converter's doing its job. I need stickier tires. I need warmer pavement. I need Caltrax. I have those. I just need to put them on. I really like how it softened up that shift too. I mean, I can feel it shift, but instead of like that just bam, that just kind of like hits the whole truck, it like shifts, but it's a little bit soft, right? I don't know, it feels perfect now. That's the way I'll describe it. I think I need to play with the shift points just a little bit, because it does shift based off of RPM and mile per hour, and I think the looser converter skews that just a little bit, but it feels good. I like it. This is going to be fun. All right, guys, unfortunately, with the weather out and the roads, you know, it snowed yesterday. It's like 35 degrees. The roads are dry, but they're really cold, kind of dirty and dusty. So I don't think I'm going to get any good 0 to 60 times, but just kind of for the heck of it, I'm coming to a complete stop here, and I might regret this, but we're just going to floorboard it from a dig. So here goes nothing. Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely not going to get any good 0 to 60 runs like that, but we just did a 95-mile-an-hour burnout from a dead stop without touching the brake. So, yeah, in my opinion, this converter is definitely doing what it should. I can't wait to actually measure some data, because before it took 4 full seconds to get the turbo spooled up, and it feels a lot quicker, I can tell you that now, even while we're spinning the tires like mad. Yeah, I'm happy. I should have done this converter a long time ago. So the combination, we've got a bone stock 8.1 S480 turbo, a refreshed 4L80, and then 342 gears with a true track. So this, to me, this is like the perfect combination, and it's just begging to be turned up, but we need more traction. I'm going to say thank you guys for watching. That is going to bring this video to an end. Do me a favor though, if you don't mind, click the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. Next up for this truck, we got some major changes to make to the back end. I have some Caltrax. We're going to lower it even further. Right now it's a 2.4 drop, and we're going to go to a 4.6 drop, so I can use the Caltrax that mount below the spring pack. That should help traction a little bit. We are eventually going to put some proper tires on here. I need to get like a drag radial or something. But the suspension, at least, we're going to start that as soon as we're done with the step side. I think the way this will work in the very next video you see, we'll have the step side on the dyno, so we can finally see how much improvement the camshaft made. After that, I'm going to finish the exhaust on that truck. I can build a full tailpipe and I think add a resonator. And then after that, we're going to be focusing on ugly truck for a while. And I can't wait to get going on that, because the next springtime is going to come before you know it, and I need to get back to the drag strip, and I want to seriously improve my times without actually touching the engine. Yeah, remember, we got a whole bunch of stuff going on. We got a 547 cubic inch fully forged engine that's going to be replacing the bone stock 8.1.
So yeah, that's kind of what you have to look forward to. That's what I have to look forward to. I'm excited. Thank you for watching. Catch you again soon.
All right, so just getting back from the test drive, I was planning on closing the video out there, but there's just a few footnotes I wanted to add. Number one, I actually brought it back to the driveway and I just did a quick stall test on it. You know, hold your foot on the brake, hold your foot on the gas without spinning the tires. Now we get up to about 3,200 RPM. That's kind of the threshold of where it just wants to start to spin, where before 1,700 RPM is all we could do. So this is definitely going to make a huge improvement on the launch at a drag strip. Of course, we are having traction issues now, especially that it's wintertime and the roads are garbage. But I think what I'll do is I'll probably start, next time I go to the track, I'll get the two-step set at 3,000 RPM. I think that'll be a really, really good starting point, and it'll greatly reduce the spool time of that big S480. So if I haven't said it enough, I am in love with this truck like all over again. That Circle D converter definitely made a huge improvement in all the right ways. Now, like, I absolutely would not change a thing about this truck other than, you know, making it have a whole lot more power. But for now, I am considering this perfect. So that's going to be a wrap, guys. Thanks again for watching.